Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses in New York, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. I don't know if that went in, but welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. So I got a question of what paperwork do you need to buy a house? And the real question is, it depends whether you're borrowing money and getting a mortgage on it or not. And then let's discuss when you need the paperwork and why some of this paperwork is important. So if you are closing all cash, which does not mean you're bringing cash to the closing, right? People honestly believe when I tell them that this is an all cash deal. Sometimes they say, well, are you bringing a bag of cash? Are you bringing it in envelopes? And let's understand what all cash means. All cash, A, does not mean that there's any cash involved. In fact, it's almost, I'm not going to say illegal, but it's pretty much illegal to buy real property with anything other than other than funds where you can show a paper trail. And all cash does not even mean that you're not going to get a mortgage, believe it or not. What all cash means is that you are not going to be mortgage contingent. That means that the contract that you signed, or the purchase agreement, or the purchase and sale agreement, depending on where you are, um, is not going to be contingent on a mortgage. So most transactions anywhere that happen between a buyer and a seller happen with a mortgage contingency. Certainly in New York, this is the only contingency that usually shows up in the contract in New York. So basically, it says that if buyer cannot get mortgage, sometimes with specific terms, that they can get out of the deal. And as someone who sells a lot of properties retail, this happens a lot, right? And what a lot of people don't talk about is that I was in the mortgage business for 17 years, is that a mortgage contingency clause in a contract really is a get out of contract free card. And I can tell you, I've had many situations where buyers have been in contract on a property I'm selling for 2 to 3 months and then just said, sorry, we're out, and they're out. When you say all cash, really what it means is that I'm not going to be mortgage contingent. I can still go get a mortgage if I want, right? Some people get crazy. I'll sign an all cash contract and then I'll say I'm going to get a loan. And they'll be like, what? You can't get a loan? It's all cash. I'm like, listen, I can do whatever the hell I want. You're going to get your money at the closing, and that's what matters. So, the paperwork you're going to need if you're all cash usually is just proof of funds, right? So let's say I'm saying I'm not going to be mortgage contingent. Usually, if there's a realtor that's listing, is going to say, can you show proof of funds? They're going to want to see a bank statement or something that shows you have the money to close. Now, what happens sometimes is that you're selling a property to buy this property. And in that case, you don't have the funds, right? What you have is a contract for sale from the property you're selling. Now, let me change the angle here a little bit. What that means is that if you well, it really depends, right? Well, I'm going to say if you're smart, but the truth is that you would like to make your contract that you're buying contingent on the contract you're selling. Now, personally, for me, from my perspective, if I have to sell a property and the buyer says I'm contingent on another sale, I get very, very concerned. I don't like that because I have no idea what's going on with that transaction. I have no idea if that buyer is going to come through. I have no idea about anything. It's really, the entire transaction is completely out of my hands. So I don't like that. Some people don't care, right? Some people, say no problem, right? Um, but usually, if you show a contract and you say, hey, it's contingent on the sale, but this is going to happen soon, some sellers will be fine with that. Some sellers will say, no, you'll close, that's fine. But if you have a problem with that, you're still responsible to close on my property. So that happens a lot, more than you think, right? There's daisy chains. Sometimes there's 4 transactions that are all dependent on each other, all contingent on each other, right? I've had situations where the buyer was contingent. I allowed a buyer to go into contract on a property I'm selling, contingent on another deal, and like 3 deals, and that was contingent on a deal, that was contingent on a deal, and that deal fell apart. It's a bad situation. Okay, so the paperwork you're going to need. So if you're closing all cash, usually you just need to show proof of funds, but usually that's going to be if there's no contingencies. If you're going to be contingent on the sale of another property, you're selling a property to buy this one, you're going to want to show the contract. Now, most situations are you're going to get a mortgage, you're going to get a loan. So then you need to show paperwork. What most realtors request is a pre-approval. Now, again, having had a lot of mortgage experience, I can tell you most pre-approvals are not worth crap. So usually when I'm selling something and I get a pre-approval, I'll call the mortgage lender and I'll say, really, how much information do you really have? Most of the time, they just ran credit. They said the credit's good, and they're accepting buyer's word for how much income and assets they have, right? We learned in the mortgage business that a mortgage stands on three legs: income, assets, four legs: income, assets, credit, and the appraisal, right? The value of the property they're buying. Very often, for pre-approval, the lender has not really looked into the income and the assets. The person has told them, this is how much money I make, this is how much money I show. It's more important how much you show than how much you make. And this is what I have in the bank. But they haven't really looked at it. I can tell you that regardless of what they've looked at, the possibility for that person to just simply call the mortgage person and say, I changed my mind, give me a denial, is always there. Always. I did it on many, many occasions, right? It's very easy to deny somebody for a mortgage. Documents expire all the time. So if you really want to show someone that you can close, you can show the proof of funds if you have the money, even if you're getting being mortgage contingent. You can say, listen, I'm going to get a mortgage. I don't want to buy this property if I don't get a mortgage, but I have the money. So you know that I'm a really low risk person, right? Because I have all this money in the bank. That's something you could show. Most of the time, just going to be a pre-approval or a proof of funds. That's what you need to, paperwork you sort of need to show by house. Now, if you're buying this house without a realtor who knows what they're doing, you don't need to show anything, right? You just put in an offer, go to contract. Really depends on the seller, or what the seller is going to require. I've had situations where a seller required a lot from me, right? They didn't just require proof of funds, they required all kinds of crazy things for me to jump through hoops that can happen. But at the very least, if you go to buy a house in today's market, you need either proof of funds that you can show that you can close on cash, or a pre-approval from a mortgage company that says, hey, this guy's pre-approved for this amount. Now, when it comes to pre-approval, you have to be smart, right? Because let's say you get a pre-approval that says you can borrow up to $700,000, and you now want to buy property for $500,000. I can tell you as a seller, if I see a pre-approval for $700,000, and you're bidding and you're offering $500 for my property, and I really want $550, I'm going to push you as hard as I can on the price. So a smarter move is to come up with multiple pre-approvals, or to call your lender and say, I need a pre-approval for this amount, for $500,000, and get a new one when you submit the offer. It's a little tip that I haven't told a lot of people, but I would recommend doing that. Because as a seller, if someone shows me a pre-approval for a much higher amount, and you're not coming up to my asking price, or you're not coming up to the price that I want, or I have another offer that's higher than yours, I may try to push you for a higher amount. If you show me less, I may not. Now, that may result in you not getting the property. I mean, I'm always going to give you a shot. I'm not going to not give you a chance to buy the property because of the pre-approval amount, but it's in the buyer's best interest to show a pre-approval amount that's very, very close to the offer amount. So that is important. Are there any other? So actually, to close on the house, you're going to need photo ID, obviously. You're going to need the money. That's not a document, but that's really important. The money has to be there. And then there are going to be documents signed at the closing. So even on a non-mortgage closing, you're going to need to show, in New York, there's a TPT and the RPT, all the real estate transfer docs. You need to have them signed. You need to show a photo ID so that people know who you are. And then obviously there should be a paper trail on all the money. Or it can go to your attorney and then it can go to the closing. But that is the basics of what paperwork you need to buy a house. That is it. You do not need to be a U.S. citizen if you have photo ID. You can buy property in I think all states, without being a U.S. citizen. To get a mortgage, that depends on the lender. There are lenders who lend to foreign nationals. That's fine. Certainly, if you have a green card, you're a resident alien. That's perfect. If you're a citizen, that's fine. But if you have a driver's license, and in New York, you do not need to be a U.S. citizen to get a driver's license, which is why the DMV is packed. No one's going to ask you your immigration status if you have a photo ID, if you have a driver's license. So I hope this was helpful in explaining what paperwork you need. That was a very general question. If you are interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in finding out more about a course I have that teaches how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. If you are interested in finding out more about one-on-one coaching, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. What else? If you are interested in, I think that's all if you're interested. Sorry. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help my SEO, my search engine optimization. And please keep the comments coming. I try to go live 5 times a week. I'm not going to say try. I go live 5 times a week, and I don't always know what to say. So Keep the comments coming. Any comment is good. It doesn't have to be about the video you're watching. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply. If it's something I've covered before, I'll send you links to link to a video or videos on it. And if it's something new, I will do a new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it.